Hi, Ennis from Never Stop Trucking here. Today we are talking about cheap freight. A disclaimer for beginning, this is not something that a lot of people like to talk about, and a lot of people feel different way, and I may not be right about all this, but I want to tell you what I think. Now, what is cheap freight, and do we actually need it? Well, cheap freight is something that you do for less money than you're supposed to get for that said load. So if the market rates are $3 per mile and you do something for $1.50, then in my eyes that's cheap freight. $2 might be considered cheap too, but it's still profitable. So if you go under $2, then we could say that's cheap. That's what I think. There is no set definition. I may be wrong, but that's just my opinion. We have all these big companies that have thousands of trucks and trailers, like J.B. Hunt, Swift, Schneider, and others. And sometimes they will do their freight for a lot of less money than we as small companies would do it for. We have the luxury of picking our own loads because we have less trucks and we have more time, and we want to make as much money as possible with our trucks, especially if you're an owner operator and you only have one truck, then you want to do a maximum. We have these concepts of chain stores, for example, Walmart and others here in the United States, and they can afford to sell you their products for less money than other small stores because they go by volume. They sell a lot of products, and they can have less profits. They can afford it to have less profits with their products. Now, that kind of sucks because some people would rather go to Walmart because their prices are cheaper and you can get the same product there for less money, and no one blames them. So they do it that way, and these big trucking companies, they kind of do it in the same way because they count on volume. If they make less money on a load, that's okay with them because they're still making money, and with thousands of trucks it adds up, and for them that's okay. Now that drives prices down for other companies. Now if the broker posts it on a load board, that means that you usually they don't have a contract, they don't have these loads that they don't cover these loads with these big carriers. They are looking for you for a small carrier, and that's how we find our loads, and then we have to negotiate and try to get the most money out of that load, while on the other hand the brokers are trying to give you the load for the least money. So it's a game. Now if you get a cheap load, does that mean that you're not profitable? If you get a cheap load, does that mean that your company is going to shut down? You're going to have to close business and lose everything. If you get a cheap load, does that mean that you're driving the other prices down? We have thousands of these loads and you get one cheap load. Does that mean that you're making it worse for everyone else that's out there? Well, I don't think this is true for anyone. You see, I saw some comments on my videos and on other videos, and then when you talk to someone, eye to eye in this business, and they complain, well, there are these carriers that do this cheap freight, and then it drives the prices down for everyone. I don't think that's true. There are a lot of carriers that have contracted rates, and that can be bad or good. Because if the times are good and you have this contracted rate that's less than market rates, you could be making more, but you have a contract, you have to do it for that small rate, and vice versa. So these carriers are tied up to those rates, and they have to do it for cheap rate. They have no choice. Now, if I have a driver that for some reason has to go somewhere and I don't see another load but a cheap load, then I will take that load. I can't say, well, I never booked a cheap load. Yes, I have, and I will continue to do so if I need that load. Is that going to make the prices go down for everyone else? No, it's not. And it has always been like that, and it will always be like that. Someone is going to take that cheap load. Now, if you have 20 loads and 19 of them are paying, reasonable, and one is only cheap, that load is going to go for cheap. Someone will take it eventually, someone that needs it. There might be a few reasons why you need that load. Your driver wants to go home. Now, my drivers, I always send them home when they want to go home. I don't make excuses like there are no loads. Let's keep you out for another week. No, I respect their home time, and I send them load. Even if I have to send them home empty, I will send them home. Now, that cheap load can cover my fuel, my expenses, and what I'm paying the driver. If my profit is zero, that's fine, because it's only one load. Remember, when you do your profits, people will try to calculate the cost per mile. I don't do it that way. I make a video about that soon, but I myself don't do it that way. I always look at the big picture, like at the end of the week, how much money I made, how many miles my truck drove, how much fuel I spent that week on that truck, what's the driver's pay, and what are my regular maintenance, cost, if I have payments on the truck and insurance, all that, and I take all that into the account and then deduct it from the gross, and that's my profit for that week. So you have to look into the big picture. That's why people calculate their salaries yearly. You have a yearly salary, because you might not work for a week or two or a month during a year, and your pay is zero. Okay, so that's why we take all the pay that we made that year, and then we divide it by 52, and that's our average, and that's our weekly pay. And then same with our trucks. If you take a big picture, if you look at your weekly gross and your weekly profit, if you look at monthly or annually, most companies, even outside of the trucking business, they have annual reports or quarterly reports, and then they calculate their profits. They don't calculate their profits for each product, for each day. They take more time into account, and then they divide it, and they come up with their profits or loss, their statistics, and that's how they keep track of that. So same here. If you book a cheap load and you have, like, all week your truck drove for $3 a mile, and now this one load, and it's usually a short load, it's usually not a long load. Now it's going to be $1 or $1.50 per mile. Take into the account the whole week, and then divide it by number of miles. Then you'll see your average pay per mile, because I'm not going to send the truck empty unless I have to somewhere. I'd rather take that cheap load and cover my fuel and cover my truck's pay, and just go to a better area, send the driver home. Whatever the reason is that we have to go to that certain area, and we cannot find a good paying load, I myself will always get that load, and I will cover at least the other expenses, and the rest of the week, rest of the month, or rest of the quarter will make up, and then we'll take the big picture into the account, and then we'll see our profits. Now, like we said before, these big companies, they can afford to do cheap loads, and then their rates are usually smaller than our rates. So the statistics, I'm just remembering this now. I think it's something that like only 1 out of 5 or only 1 out of 10 trucking companies make it past 5 years. So there are a lot of trucking companies that are failing. And then, sometimes it's big companies, sometimes it's small ones, but it's usually smaller ones because most trucking companies are small, like 1 to 5 trucks. There are a lot of trucking companies who are failing, but they're not failing because they are doing cheap loads sometimes. They're failing because, of the mismanagement. Maybe they have a lot of debt. They are not making any profits because they have a lot of expenses, or they don't know how to manage the business correctly. Now, we are always complaining about these big companies that are driving the costs down, but they're still in business and they're profitable, even though they're doing all these loads for less money. So how is that? How is that possible? Are we, if we say I never booked a cheap load in my life, I would never do that. Are we much smarter than, these big companies who, work with billions? You get my point. It doesn't matter. Like if you occasionally do a cheap load, that's not the reason why we might fail as a company. There are a lot of other reasons why a lot of trucking companies are shutting doors, not because they sometimes do a cheap load, because like we said, these big companies, they can afford it, and they have systems and they have people who monitor their expenses. They have all these different departments whose expertise is only like to save money, for safety, for new inventions, to look for new accounts. And they would analyze, they would go back a quarter or a whole year, and they would analyze their costs, and they would see where they went wrong, where they could save money, how they can structure the business better. And that's why they are successful. You may be, or I may be a good dispatcher, and I may book loads. Like I have some of people that I know, they brag how, they book these great loads, like their drivers are making maybe twice as their gross is twice as bigger than my truck. Supposedly, that's what they say. And they brag about it. Now, that may be true, but that's not going to last a long time. There are a lot of risks. Like now we have these ELDs, and it's much harder to cheat on your logbooks. Before, when we had paper logs, then you could do whatever you want. But there are still people who would unplug it and do what they do, and I don't tolerate that. Now, if you tolerate that, and then if you make a lot of money, your trucks make a big, they have a big gross at the end of the week. That doesn't mean that you're going to success. That doesn't mean you're going to get rich, or that they're going to get rich. That only means eventually you're going to get yourself into trouble, because your driver is going to be tired all the time. If it's a company driver, they might leave. They might go someplace else. Like during winter, it's slippery. It's hard to drive. They might get into an accident. DOT might put them out of service because they don't have time to maintain their trucks, or they don't even look at that. They just drive and drive and drive. There is a lot of things that can go wrong. And if something really bad happens, that can shut you down. Doesn't matter, you made all this money, on your high-paying loads. The truck is running and making all these big gross revenues, but eventually something might happen, and you don't want that. You want your trucks to be safe. You want your driver to be rested. You don't want to push anyone because that only leads to trouble. If you want to run a safe and a stable company with steady income that's slowly growing, that's the healthy way of doing business, because you always want your business to grow a little bit. If it's not growing, that's not good, because eventually if someone leaves, then it will go down. Something, your trucks break down, you sell a truck, then it will go down. You want it always to grow steadily but slowly, and that's the most secure way to grow. If you grow like this, you're probably eventually gonna fall like this, because you can't handle it. There's a lot of liability involved. If you get a lot of trucks at the same time, a lot of drivers, that opens up a bigger chance for something to go wrong, with your trucks, with your safety, with your drivers. It's just not, and that's why insurance companies, we don't understand it. We always say, like, why don't they let me add more trucks? They don't want that. They've been doing that for years, and we want everything now and now we want to grow big right away. No, it doesn't work like that. It has to be slow, and then with time you learn and you know how to implement everything, and then be safe, and then not hurt anyone, and not get into a lawsuit. So that's why we need to take it easy and book good freight when we can. If we can't, then just book whatever is out there to survive, and have a small profit. But when the times go, when the markets go up, then we can ask for more money and have a big profit. We're pushing our drivers, pushing ourselves, and claim that we don't do cheap freight, then there is something wrong with the way we are doing business. Okay, so I might be talking too much here, but that's my point. Let me know in the comments what you think about cheap freight, about if we should ever book it, or if we should sometimes go with it, and good and bad sides about it. And then I'll see you around. Thanks for watching. Check out the description of the video. There are a lot of goodies there, and then I'll see you around.